All Detroit has a cancer. The cancer is crime.
We need a self-sufficient law enforcement robot.
How long will it take?
We can go to prototype within 90 days.
Where are you from?
Metro South.
Welcome to hell.
All units, sector 9.
Dead or alive, you're coming with me.
You're gonna be a bad mother.
Half man,
This guy's really good.
half machine,
Robocop. What is he?
He's a cyborg, you idiot.
all hero.
What are your prime directives?
Protect the innocent. Let the woman go, or there will be trouble. Uphold the law. You are under arrest.
What is this shit?
Justice gets an upgrade.
Looking for me? Your move, creep.
Robocop.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.
What's shaking? We're back with a brand new episode of Let's Watch It Again, and this time I have a brand new guest to this podcast. I have the super talented and lovely Dom Griffin. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, man.
So, obviously, I was doing a little research, a little poaching, if you will, when I did those the Truth in This Art, and I was like, oh, I got to have Dom on one of these eventually, and here you are. So
Yes, happy to be here.
we're doing RoboCop, and I want to start off by talking about the introducing the movie for those who haven't seen it. It's not the bad one, you know what I mean? It's not the 2014 one, which we might talk about that a little bit, but when was the last time you saw this movie before I get into the whole intro? So
I rewatched it yesterday, but before that, I don't think I'd seen it for the last 5 or 10 years, maybe.
Yeah.
I've seen that's not true. I think I maybe caught a couple of scenes on HBO randomly or something like that. But I hadn't watched it all the way through in a long time.
Yeah, this is probably a movie that I watched a lot as a kid, and I remember movies very well, and I kind of rewatch it in a more critical sort of way to pick up certain things. This is one of the rare movies that I can watch multiple times and it never feels old for me. There's, I rewatched it today. There was one little part where I was like, I'm going to skip this because I don't care about this scene at all. But for the most part, I was like, get to the thing that I'm looking for. And watch all but 5 minutes of the movie. And it's something that I dig. So for those who are unfamiliar with RoboCop, here's the thing. In a violent near-apocalyptic Detroit, an evil corporation, Omni Consumer Products, wins a contract from the city government to privatize the police force. To test their crime-eradicating cyborgs, the company leads street cop Alex Murphy into an armed confrontation with crime lord Boddicker. So they use his body to support their untested RoboCop prototype. But when RoboCop learns of the company's nefarious plans, he turns on his masters, RoboCop. I know.
What's killer about this movie is that I pulled up the Wikipedia when I was watching it just to remember certain details, whatever, and I forgot that it's this is a sci-fi thing. This is supposed to be the future. Watching it today, you're just this is all pretty fucking. This could happen. Yeah. There's not a single thing that happens in RoboCop where I'm like, that's far-fetched. I'm like, no, this is all pretty dead on.
And the thing that's funny about it, when you hear private police, we had the thing in Baltimore about private police. I was like, look, I remember I was ranting, and all of my rants are pop culture related. I was like, you got fuckers walking around like Bane from The Dark Knight Rises, and they were like, what? Excuse me? I was like, here's a picture. They're like, oh, they are wearing that. I was like, I know.
They really are dressed like the Fire Rises,
Fuck out of here. So, also, I read that this movie is supposed to be set in the future from the date it was released. It was a 1987 release. It's supposed to be set in 91, which is a weird choice.
It's weird because it's I like sci-fi that's like the near future. Like this is like right outside your door. It's almost here. And it obviously does feel very 80s and very early 90s in a way. Yeah. But not watching it. Watching it in 2022, you're like, none of this feels like the future. This is just like, we're here, yo. Like there's not a single element of the movie where I was like, oh, they were wrong. They didn't predict this. I'm like, no, this is pretty fucking good. Yeah.
So I want to get into some of the stats on the movie, and I want to talk about just some of our introductory kind of feelings about it and watching it with that history. Mm-hmm. So from your standpoint, like what are maybe 3 words that you would use to like either describe it or how it's been described to you? Like when you read about RoboCop and oral histories and such, what's that through line? What always pops up?
I think that like RoboCop is like a deeply cynical movie.
Yes.
But like not in an off-putting way. I think about the fact that it was really prescient. But like, okay, you know how there's certain movies that have like an actual powerful like political message or like interesting social commentary and stuff like that. And this is definitely one of those movies, but it's also just fucking rad. You know what I mean? Like RoboCop is a movie where you're like, oh yeah, I could sit and talk to you for like hours about its themes and what it means and all this different stuff. But also, there's just like a robot cop, and he just murks the shit out of people. You know what I mean? Like there's a very like baseline, visceral thing about RoboCop where it's like, you get into it and you're like, oh yeah, fuck yeah, this is just like the man and all this different stuff, and like, oh look, the criminals working with corporations, and then he pops out and is like spinning the gun in his hand and stuff like that. As a kid, that's all I remember. You know what I mean? Like when I was a kid, RoboCop did not seem like an R-rated political sci-fi thriller. It was just cool. Like RoboCop was fucking cool. Yes. So it was fun for me watching it this time and like being really, really keyed into all the like themes and stuff, but also just the child in me being like, fucking RoboCop.
Yeah, that's I like it's the same thing for me. And you hear other things in it about like corporate power. Obviously, you touched on that. There's a war on drugs kind of thing, especially in that scene where he steps on, I guess they're crack vials or what have you. And they really pan to his fucking foot too. Masculinity and authority and how that stuff works. Humanity and death. So that's there. And the dude that's responsible or credited for being as responsible, the Ed Neumeyer dude or what have you, he hated his job. So he was like an executive, I believe. So that's probably where some of that comes from, of like, nah, screw this. This stinks.
Yeah, it's crazy to me that like Neumeyer did this and then he collabed with Verhoeven later on Starship Troopers.
Which is another one of my favorites.
And both movies have like a real similar, they're sharp. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like there's something, like, they're sharp and they're incisive, but they're also like, really broad. Do you know what I mean? Like they're both movies that are like, yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff to unpack, but also it's just like, this is so fucking obvious. It's crazy that people don't get it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you talk to people about RoboCop and they're like, oh, I don't see all that stuff. I'm like, are you an idiot? Like, this is not a subtle movie. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like whatever media literacy test you could have for people would just be like, what do you think about Starship Troopers? If you can't figure this out, you should leave. Mm-hmm. But I love the fact that the movie is so pulpy and like just violent and brutal and stuff. But it's also like human. It's also really funny. It's like a really funny movie. It's got an amazing cast. Like I love movies that have really good character actor casts. Yeah. Just like any movie that has more than 3, it's that guy. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Where you're like, oh shit, it's Ray Weiss. Oh shit, it's like it's Kurtwood Smith. You know, every person in this movie is like that guy kind of. Yeah. It's so good. RoboCop is so good. Sorry.
So I want to throw these in there real quick. So this is a July 17th, 1987 release. So it's 35th anniversary. Other movies that came out that were new that week that came out against it, it's not good. Jaws 4, The Revenge.
Oh, I forgot there was the 4th Jaws.
It's not great. Also, that was in the theaters during this time was another movie that's going to be reviewed very soon, I think. Predator, which is just hyper masculinity. It's just biceps with oil. Beverly Hills Cop 2. And Dragnet and Revenge of the Nerds 2, Nerds in Paradise, which is one of my favorites.
Dragnet with Tom Hanks?
Yes.
That came out in 87?
Yeah. And Full Metal Jacket as well.
I don't know why I think of that as being like an early 90s movie. That's weird. Okay, that actually shocked me.
So here's one of the stats for a movie that's violent, because the violence is one of the things that sticks out, because there's as we were talking a little bit before we got started, if you look at the director's cut versus the theatrical cut, they're both 103 minutes in terms of runtime, but there are different angles in that director's cut that are much more brutal. So, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about one of the major stats in a movie like this, the body count. Where would you say this body count is at? What number would you throw out off the top of your head?
Oh, if I had to guess, how many people die, or how many people Robocop kills specifically?
How many people die?
It's like 40, maybe. Am I really off?
34. You're very close.
Okay, yeah.
Thanks, Robo.
That feels really fucking dumb that I was like that close to it. But you can sort of, I mean, for one thing, this movie is shorter than a lot of other hyper-violent movies, so there's less time for people to die, and it's actually pretty
what's the death per minute?
Well, it's pretty contained. You know what I mean? Like, there's never a scene where, some modern movies, like the kill counts are fucked up because you're like, oh yeah, there's this scene where they blow up a truck that has 50 people. You know what I mean? But all the deaths here are pretty like, I don't want to say it's more intimate because that's not really quite true. But like every time someone dies, it's like, I know that guy died. That guy just ate shit just right there. Whereas some violent movies nowadays are just like such indiscriminate carnage that you're like, a lot of people could have died in that scene.
Like a lot of the
superhero movies, yeah, where you're like, oh, is the whole city fucking dead? Robocop really is just like someone points and that fucker's head explodes. You know what I mean? Like, it's just you, bam, you, bam.
One of the things that is in there that I don't think it gets a lot of credit for, I was on this arc of watching, there's a lot of, I think, Korean, maybe Japanese as well, movies that have this revenge theme, right? And this is a revenge movie as well, because he hunts these fuckers down. Like, once he realized, oh, you are the ones that did it? All right, cool.
It's also very there's like this cycle of cruelty in the movie, which is that like, I mean, it's kind of hard to unpack like the propaganda side of all this different stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But like, there's the way the cops are displayed at first is like the cops aren't crazy violent. Yeah, like they're as violent as they have to be because of, oh my God, these criminals are like super criminals. You know what I mean? Like Clarence Boddicker is not like a regular crime person. He's kind of like a Batman villain. You know what I mean?
We will talk about him.
He's a bit much, you know? But like, I feel like once Peter Well's character dies and comes back as Robocop, he's like inflicting the specific kind of violence they inflicted on him. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of why the director's cut with the extra shots of like the blood and stuff is necessary, because him getting his hand shut off and then him throwing the dude through glass later is like whatever. But when you see the way his hand explodes in the director's cut and you see the way he shoots them back and stuff, it's a lot more specifically like an eye for an eye kind of violence. So I think that level of carnage and that level of messiness is really important. And
there's and I had this for later, but I at least want to throw it in because you're mentioning it. There is this full circleness there too, where if you look at how in the beginning, I have a funny observation about that, but towards the beginning of the movie, when Joe Coxing it up and he like punches Anne and she falls and doesn't die, the same thing happens to him, and when Clarence is thrown through the friggin' glass or what have you. Also, the full circleness of it, where they killed Murphy or have you, that's the same place where they end up getting killed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is a sort of like a, I can't really speak to it, but I know Verhoeven's films have a lot of like his opinions about like religion and stuff, you know, and about like Jesus and Christianity and everything. And like, I know there's sort of a side to that like that stuff always kind of comes out in his movies, like specifically with like the way Robocop is like resurrected and stuff like that. I remember I was kind of tired when I watched it, but I was like, oh, when he's stabbed with the big metal thing, it's kind of like the spirit of like, you know what I mean? Like stuff like that. And I was like, oh man, this guy's doing a lot for a movie about a robot cop.
And because you know, I think this thing is in there. We'll talk about it. I think it's coming up next in these. I have it called 10 Things About Trivia. But I want to throw this in there. So the budget for this movie was just short of $14 million, and the box office was about 53. So
a different time.
Yeah, and that is using the movie math. Generally speaking, if you make 3 times what it costs, you're getting a sequel. That's kind of what happens. It's diminishing after that. Those next two. The second one is funny because of the old man, behave yourselves. And then you had friggin' weird Japanese stuff in the third one that's just much maligned and just trash.
Yeah, both of those movies to me are like a blur. I know I've seen them both, but I don't remember a fucking thing about them at all.
There is a Japanese guy. The third one is the Frank Miller one that Peter Weller's in.
That's right.
Yeah. The second one, it has that kid who's like a gangster, and it's kind of great, actually. And it has the whole drug storyline with using Nuke and Tom Noonan as the villain. Yeah.
I might have to run those back. I forgot Tom Noonan was one of them. That's like must-see now.
Yeah. So here's 10 things about trivia. The screenplay was offered to, rejected by virtually every big director in Hollywood before Verhoeven got a hold of it. He threw it away after reading the first page, is convinced that it was just a dumb action movie. His wife, Martine, read it all the way through and convinced him that the story was more layered with many satirical and allegorical elements, leading to Verhoeven to direct the movie. The Robocop suit, and I feel like I could use this. The Robocop suit was very hot and heavy. So heavy that Peter Weller would lose 3 pounds a day from water loss. Eventually, they added an air conditioning unit to the suit.
The sorts of things that happen to actors in movies like this, it's like, I know they get paid a lot, but it's just like, why, you couldn't come up with something that wasn't like weird and dehumanizing?
It's
not fucking real.
It had to be super heavy, too. You're like, because Peter Weller's not a big dude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's kind of wiry.
And so the dude that came in later, who's the guy that was in the remake? He ended up playing Rick Flag.
Joel Kinnaman, right?
Yes.
It's Joel Kinnaman in the remake. Yeah,
I think he's like a bigger guy.
He's tall too. He's like his all stature.
Yeah. In Sacramento, California, a robbery suspect fled into a darkened movie theater to escape pursuing police. He became engrossed in the movie, which was playing on the screen. So engrossed that he failed to notice the police had evacuated all the other patrons in the theater. When the lights flipped on, the stuntman was taken into custody.
There is nothing that says your movie rules more than a guy who like goes to jail because he was like, yo, this is tight. You're in the middle of running from the police and you're like, what's going on with this Robocop guy? He was compelling.
He was a mill. We'll talk about that guy. He ate a lot of shit in that movie. When in the Robocop costume, Weller would remain in character between takes, only responding to director Verhoeven's instructions when properly addressed as Robo. Verhoeven found it too funny to take seriously, and it was dropped. Like, come on, be serious.
We're making a movie called Robocop, my friend. Please stop.
Ed Neumeyer came up with the idea for Robocop after he helped out on the set of Blade Runner in 1982, also an anniversary year, which was about cops hunting robots who look like humans in the future. Intrigued, Neumeyer turned the scenario into a future where a cop was looking like a robot and would hunt human criminals.
That makes sense. But I feel like there's also another big influence on Robocop that he may be left out for legal reasons.
Spin it, please throw it out there.
Judge Dredd, like I don't know if you've ever seen anything about like the anyone who worked at 2000 AD. They talk about Robocop like those motherfuckers, like the whole thing with his mouth, the entire like tone of Robocop,
yes, the helmet,
it's extremely Judge Dredd. It's what makes the Judge Dredd movies so sad because you're like, yo, they already did this. They figured out what works about these comics and they made it Robocop. I mean, plus other things too.
They out-dreaded them.
I was inspired by Blade. Motherfucker. Come on now.
He Lichtenstein that shit. He was like, I'm gonna make a copy of a thing, but make it it's mine. So it's like,
there's nothing wrong with that. I don't judge shit like that, but it's like when people will just cop to it, bro. Like just be like, yeah.
Just say, look, I get
it's like I don't know if you remember this, but like when remember that kids cartoon Freakazoid that was on like the WB like when we were kids, and like it's just a humongous ripoff of Michael Allred's Madman comic.
Yes.
To the point that like artists who worked on the show told Allred like, yeah, dude, we had your books in the fucking writers' room. Like,
do you remember
illegal?
Do you remember early '90s? It was a show called Ultra Force?
Mm-hmm.
That is X-Men to a T, the animated X. I was like, what is this?
Yeah, a lot of that Malibu stuff was real questionable.
We're taking this. So the Robocop suit was the most expensive item on set. While the price range varies, the producers indicated that they spent anywhere between $500,000 to $1 million on the suit.
That sounds about right.
With no air conditioner though. Like, fuck
Y'all
off.
couldn't put in a fucking carburetor for this movie.
Verhoeven admitted that while reading the screenplay for the first time, he had difficulties with American slang since he's Dutch. For instance, he did not understand why African American gang members, so Joe Cox, would call Caucasian members brother, even though they weren't related. That is really funny to me.
It's really, really funny, yeah.
Why would he call them that? Like, they look different.
For a brief second, as you were explaining it, I was like, did they drop any N-bombs in Robocop?
Yo.
I was trying to picture Verhoeven like unpacking that. Like, I thought that was a slur. Like, oh, they're reclaiming it. Okay.
They did throw, because the version I watched, I did a similar thing that you described earlier, and it came with subtitles, and the subtitles were off by multiple seconons. So
of course, yeah.
I was skipping ahead, and it was one scene that the F-bomb flew out, and I was like, when did that happen?
Oh yeah, I remember what scene, but I remember it happening and kind of being like, oh, yep, 80s. Like,
yep. Mm-hmm.
Not just, I mean, I know that word made it through pop culture for another like 10 or 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
But like 80s is like prime usage of that. Like,
yes.
Like Monster Squad is like a movie for kids, and that word just flies in there. And you're like, yeah, I mean, that's how these kids would have talked, I guess. It's hateful and wrong, but like I get it.
It's rough. It's there, and I think sometimes these things that you look back and while recognizing it, having that context there, and understanding like, yeah, this is what was happening at the time. It's not great. But this is indicative of how people probably talked with this type of person would have talked if they existed in real life, I suppose.
Yeah, it's like when people talk about like the N-word usage in like Goodfellas. I'm like, that's how I feel like Italian mobsters would talk about Samuel L. Jackson if he fell asleep after a heist. I think that's just what they'd say.
Yeah, that's not too far. It's like, well, what are we, out of my way? Like,
yeah, that sounds right.
So the film was submitted. This is a number. How many times was it submitted to the MPAA? What do you think?
It's a lot. I think it's like 5 or 6 or something like that. Is it more than that?
12 times to secure the R rating.
Yeah, because what's funny about that though is like, okay, I know that look, the MPAA is awful and it's like they hate violence, but like sex is fine or whatever.
That's
or like
weird,
violence
yeah.
is fine, but sex is bad. Like there's a weirdness about what they choose to think is bad. But I have to wonder if it took 12 fucking submissions, if Verhoeven was just he was just being inflexible.
Yeah.
Because after the first pass, you know what they're going to say no to. Or do you think he was like, no, I have to have this shot of his hand exploding. I have to have that. And they're like, no. And he's like, okay, can I have this other shot of this guy's head exploding? They're like, fucking dude, do you not get it? No.
And it's like, you got to take one of these out, because you look at it like, I start thinking, because there is a scene in here in this movie that's very Cronenberg. And when you have these Cronenberg things in there, it's like, yo, you had too many of these is what happened. You got to take out a couple. Like, sir, switch it.
That's kind of actually why I wanted to watch the theatrical, not the director's cut, because sometimes I think that like filmmakers will be like, no, I have to have this explicit thing. And I'm like, you're generally fine without it. Like, we didn't know. You shot that. This worked.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Some people love getting that extra gore and stuff. I mean, I like it too sometimes, but like, it's also, if it works without it, then it works without it, you know?
I think the previous time that I watched, there was only one scene that I knew that you could tell was edited weirdly. It was when Clarence got it in the neck. I was like, nah, that scene showed his face. It didn't just cut away.
Yeah. In the theatrical, you see his face for that, but also it looks like they didn't process it the right way and threw it back into the director's cut, so it looks it doesn't match quite right. Yeah, which makes it more distracting. But I mean, it's the violence is helpful. It is necessary for the story, yes, but I'm pretty sure if I watched, because I think somewhere they're streaming the unrated X cut. I want to say it might be on Prime or something. I don't know if they still do. I was looking for it, and I was like, I don't really want to watch that. I didn't. It's like I went back and watched the director's cut for Verhoeven's like Hollow Man.
Okay, yeah.
And there's like a really rapey scene that I just didn't remember.
It's
like
not great.
The whole movie's is very like that. Yeah. No, I mean that's the purpose of. I get it. That's what the story's about. But there's one scene that they kept back in where I was like, if you left this scene in, it happens at a point in the story where Kevin Bacon's character is not fully a heel. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, he's a creep and you can see the power in the anonymity getting to him, but he's still like, hey, it's this guy's coworkers. You know what I mean? Yeah. There's a scene in the director's cut where you're like, yo, I can't watch 4 more scenes of him palling around with them after this point. It completely changes the tone of the story. you can just cut this out. It says the same thing. You know, that's how I feel about director's cuts a lot. It's like, hey, sometimes people should get fucking edited. Sometimes it's not the worst.
So here's a few more things. For the attempted rape scene, that's one that stuck with me for the last 35 years. Writer Ed Menumeyer originally had Robocop shoot past the victim's cheek, hitting and killing the rapist. While getting ready to shoot the scene as scripted, Verhoeven noticed that Donna Keegan's legs were spread apart, giving him the idea to have Robocop shoot between her legs and hit the rapist in the genitals. Neumeier loved that idea. It was like, yes, Blue, do it. His dick
Why
gone.
did we do this? Yeah, this is great. Yeah, it's iconic. It's such a important staple. You know,
it became a toy at one point. Robocop shot that dude in the dick. The climactic melting man scene, which is the Cronenberg scene, in my opinion, is with Emil, played by Paul McCrane, melting after being soaked in toxic waste, which is so fucking disgusting. That's the other thing that stuck with me going into adulthood, was heavily objected by the MPAA, and they demanded it be removed. However, they eventually backed down when they found out in most test screenings that the scene elicited the most positive response with test audiences, and he eventually passed it without any more cuts.
What's funny about that scene is it's super unnecessary. It comes from nowhere. Everyone else just gets shot or stabbed or blown up. And then it's like, what if we melted this guy? What if we just melted this fucking dude? You know what I mean? It's very... I was thinking about how, when you mentioned that, Verhoeven didn't want to do the movie, he did the movie. I was about to say, he's the only person that could have made it. Mm-hmm. But, Cronenberg could have made Robocop.
Yes.
It's a body horror thing, way more holes. Mm-hmm. Peter Weller would have had so many orifices. That's the big thing that Cronenberg would have been there's not enough holes. He needs 4 more pussies. So that would have been different. Do you know what I mean? But otherwise, I think it would have been a similar territory. It wouldn't have been as funny, I think, either.
So USB-C Robocop. This is the only thing I'll counter
dongles.
The only thing I'll counter with the Emil scene or what have you is I think it gives you a suggestion on how bad that part of the city is, because you see the toxic waste sign there prominently.
That's true, actually. Yeah,
but you're right. He is the only person that dies in a weird way, and in addition, he's the only person that's bullied, really, with the exception of Bobby, who gets murked off. He's bullied the entire movie by fucking Clarence.
Yeah, he's sort of I don't know what you call this trope, and I don't really care, but Donald Logg in Blade, how throughout that movie he just gets fucked with. That's an important trope for movies like this. Yeah. You gotta have that one guy who's an asshole and is really cocky, and the audience is he should get hurt as much as possible.
Yes. While filming Bob's death scene, Miguel Ferrer and Kurtwood Smith began cracking up between because while directing the scene, Verhoeven referred to all the actors in character. This meant he addressed the actresses that play the prostitutes as bitches.
Okay, bitches, you have to run out this way. Bitches leave is such an iconic fucking line too. It's just
my girlfriend says that delivery. Now.
Bitches leave.
He says it so bitchly.
Oh, okay. Wait. This is popped in my head. There's when he plucks the grenade off and sets it down. I remember thinking, why is he running away from the grenade? Grenades are fast.
Yeah.
And then they set it down, and there's the shot that shows that the grenade has an analog timer on it.
Yes.
And I was like, I'm so glad they had that there, because it was annoying the shit out of me. Because I was like, how does grenades do not take 15 seconds to explode, I don't think. At least that's what movies have taught me.
Yeah.
Why is he walking away so slowly? And then I was like, oh, it's a digital future Detroit grenade that takes 19 seconds, I guess.
Also, two things. He fucking sexually licked the pen, and then after that, notice this, the care that he takes to close the door that's going to explode in the next few seconds. He's like, let me gently pull this man's door together after I blew his kneecaps off.
It's those little details that make Clarence Boddicker is such a like iconic fucking character, but I don't. We can get to that in a little bit, I guess.
The scene where Boddicker's gang tortures and finally murders Murphy is heavily edited several times to avoid that X rating. Then the theatrical version, this is what you were touching on, is clear that Boddicker has blown a part of Murphy's right hand off with a shotgun blast, and Emil then blows off his right arm at the shoulder with another shotgun blast, and then explicit gore is limited in those instances. There's also an extension of 2 seconds where Boddicker explicitly blows Murphy's brains out with a handgun. That's taken out. The scene in full, the original dismemberment was one headshot was added to the director's cut, was restored for home media.
It's like I can't imagine it being worse. Like I know they probably filmed it to be worse, but I remember thinking like we get it, dude.
It's pretty bad, and he gets shot a lot.
Get it.
Like that old Detroit vest. You don't die when you get shot a bunch of times with a shotgun.
Oh God, it was so brutal.
RoboCop's first directive, "Serve the Public Trust," is inspired by Fortune Cookie.
That's funny.
And this is the 10th one, and this is really related to the casting. After Weller complained about the costume during the first few days of filming, the role of RoboCop was offered to Lance Hendrickson, who turned it down because of timing conflicts. He was also considered for the title role in Terminator in 1984 before the cyborg was decided to be large and bulky, so Schwarzenegger, and he eventually played a robot in Aliens. Let's see, before Weller was cast, Rutger Hauer was in conversations. He was another actor that was in line, but Weller won because he was a slender, he's a little wiry, 5'10" and a half, and had a very expressive face. The face matters.
Yeah, it's like who can do this much work with their nose and mouth?
This was a person.
I mean, his eyes too, I guess, but yeah, like.
Yeah, especially when he takes off when he's not wearing a helmet, when he's Iron Manning it up for the last 20 minutes.
Yeah, for those parts, his whole face is great, but it's like. It goes back to the Judge Dredd thing. You know what I mean? Like the Judge Dredd thing is like that, the mouth chin area, and Weller's face is perfect for it. It's kind of why when they did the remake, I was like, I had no interest in it because I was just like, first of all, this looks like actually the future, which is like, to me, defeats the purpose of what makes the story interesting. Like it looks like fucking Minority Report. Like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Great movie, but just very different vibe. And then also like Joel Kinnaman doesn't have like that look, and like the suit looks like. Actually looks like an Iron Man costume. It's too like sleek and cool. And it's like, no, dude, that's not horrifying. Like if I got killed and I came back as like 2014 RoboCop, I'd be like, this is actually kind of cool. This is an improvement over the human body. You need like the body horror element. You need like the horrific. You need that visceral imagery that really embodies like why. Look, bringing a guy back to life and making him a robot cop is like fucked up, right? That's not the point, though. The point is like this entire system that enables a corporation to turn things into like military weapons to give to cops so they can make more money off of like arms deals. Yeah. That's the thing that's grotesque. So you kind of need that physical revulsion. Mm-hmm. If it just looks sleek and cool, it just looks like a fucking Raytheon ad. You know what I mean? And it's like that's that kind of like, okay, what's the point then?
Because the response when he goes there into the firing range for the first time and people are like, oh shit, what's happening here? And I will say props to the makeup work, because it was just like, oh no, that looks like that's going into the back of his head, the metal or what have you. And in the remake, while being more clean and sleek or what have you, it didn't have the same teeth. And I get it, you're going to tone down the violence, and it shows you that much of a departure. It's I think it's about 27 years after the first one. It shows you that kind of departure where, oh no, this is show business now, as opposed to this was a movie made by a foreigner.
If you need the money to make a RoboCop movie now, you can't do what RoboCop did.
No.
Not to say that no one is making transgressive movies anymore necessarily, or like that type of 40-20 pretension shit, but I mean, literally, like, I've been talking to people a lot this week about like the Northman, like the new Robert Eggers movie, the Viking thing. And there's an interview with Eggers where he was like, yeah, this is the first movie I've ever done where the studio asked me to like do test screenings, and I had to like take notes and do re-edits. And it's like, yeah, it's the first time you made a movie that needed nearly $100 million to produce. What the fuck did you think was going to happen?
Yeah.
Like if you need to spend a certain amount of money, you have to accept the like corporate control that's going to be there, So like that's kind of what's cool is like back then you could make a RoboCop. It cost $14 million. There was not an impetus that it had to be hundreds, like it has to be a huge thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to check one thing to see what that would look like now. What is that $14 million now? That's a $100 million movie now.
Oh, yeah, never mind. I keep forgetting that, like, how inflation works. Tell me you don't know shit about money without telling me you don't know shit about money.
That's really so this is I used to confuse this dude with Kurtwood Smith. So Michael Ironside was attached.
They get very similar roles.
He was going to be RoboCop. Michael Ironside was attached to be RoboCop at one point, and he was too small.
Henriksen, Howard, all very good actors. RoboCop needs to be, for the story to work, in my opinion, needs to be like a frail, regular human guy who looks like relatable.
Yeah.
Like Weller played villains later in his career and other times, but in the movie he seems like a very soft, like fleshy human trying to do good or whatever. All the other guys are dripping with menace.
Yes.
You know what I mean? That's why Henriksen would have been pretty good as the Terminator, not as like RoboCop. He looks like he murders people for fun.
And I think Michael Ironside was a little kind of like, he was a bigger frame or what have you. So it's like that wouldn't work. He may have been shorter, but a little bit wider.
Michael Ironside literally looks like RoboCop. Like his skull looks like it's made of metals. So like that doesn't work.
And he would later be in what is that? Star Trek.
He's a Starship Troopers. Yeah.
So lastly, there are 7 actors that have appeared in Star Trek franchises. Like Kurtwood Smith has been in multiple Star Trek movies. Ronnie Cox, Dick Jones, just fucking great. Ray Wise, who might be the MVP for me in this movie because I think he's coked up the entire movie.
Gotta be.
Miguel Ferrer, Robert Duquois, who is my number 2. He's the black like boss cop archetype that I love. I got the commissioner up my ass. I was waiting for him to say that. And Peter Weller appeared in Enterprise and a few other things.
Yeah, he shows up in Into Darkness. He's like the main villain in that, I think, which I scrubbed from memory, but yeah.
So that's pretty much the trivia stuff. So now, and this is the point of the show where we kind of give our kind of like thoughts on favorite scenes, lines, things like that, what works, what doesn't work, the one fix, and certain observations we've made in the movie. So I'm going to throw it up to you. You're a guest. So where do you want to start at? You want to start at observations, what works, what doesn't work, favorite scenes?
There's a lot of my favorite scene. I'll start with favorite scenes. There's a lot of little bits in this movie that like I remember it from being a kid watching it. So like this scene when RoboCop Murphy needs to like refix his aim, and his partner's like helping him, and like he shoots up the baby food. Like that image is like so burned in my head. I was like, oh my God, I knew exactly where that shot was going to go or whatever. But watching it this time, I was like, this is like kind of something about like we're talking about the masculinity side of things. Like I remember thinking the scene was somewhat sexual because like it implies that all that's left of RoboCop is like part of his brain and like his face. I don't imagine he still has the dick. He just has that gun, and like it's just something about that scene of him being like, my aim is off, and she's like helping him and holding it. I was just thinking like, I don't know, this is weird. Sorry, I'd be like, this probably just like a fucking
that's
job.
Really funny. That's really funny.
I remember thinking like something about it like reminded me of like an older man who's like infirm or something and like needs help. You know what I mean? Like there's something about that too, where I was like, oh yeah, like the gun is like a very centralized. I sound like so fucking like pseudo-intellectual right now, but like the whole time when she was, I was like, it's Paul Verhoeven. That's a penis. I know how this works.
Absolutely.
All right, that's who he is. But there were so many really cool little lines I forgot about, or maybe didn't get when I was a kid. So like, when they're like Boddicker's gang like robs banks, and the guy's like, "Why don't we just keep this money? We stole it." He's like, "No, we need to buy coke to make money off of that." He's like, "We already have money." And he's like, "What's the better? Like, there's no better crime than like free enterprise." I was like, "Yeah." Or I was like, "Oh, this is like this movie again, not subtle." But then when the dude that gets melted later, I forget his name.
Emil.
Emil, when he's talking to the guy and he's like smoking, he's like, oh, these things will kill you. He's like, what, you want to live forever? Like there's this nihilism that runs through all the characters in the movie, because the movie makes it very clear to you that this version of Detroit, and like the real version of Detroit, I guess at the time, was so horrible that it's like, yeah, like who cares if you die? Thank God. You should be so fucking lucky, you know? And that level of like cynicism and like nihilism and just sort of like kind kind of charming doomerism is like just all throughout the movie. Like every interaction is someone saying some shit where you're like, that's bleak, that's fucked up, that's dark.
Like even when they come back when the one officer was hanging on and the news prompt, I was like, yeah, hang in there, slugger. I was like, this dude is gonna die. What are you saying?
Like there's parts of RoboCop that almost seem like Simpsons background gags.
Yes,
because like it's just like this doesn't seem real, but it's like we're currently living in a version of earthly reality that is like that, where every day does not feel real. Yeah, it feels like, is this a bit? Does everyone else know it's a bit, not me? So like watching RoboCop this time, that's the biggest thing that stuck with me was just like, this is one of those movies that doesn't feel real. Like there's just parts of it that seem, because it's like satire and stuff, but like our real life feels like that. Like anytime I watch the news, I'm just kind of like, I look around like, is this like a fucking, am I in a thing? Am I in a thing right now?
you just turn into Ed Harris and
yeah, I'm just like, yo, what the fuck?
I'm in the thing, ain't I? So did you have any more before I threw mines out there?
No, I want to hear yours.
So I agree with the targeting scene, and I think that's the precursor to my favorite one is the shootout at the mill, and he's like looking for me, and he starts just blicking off, and my man Cox goes down immediately.
Damn it! Shit! Looking for me?
Obviously, when he shoots the rapist in the dick, just
Thank you! Thank you!
Madam, you have suffered an emotional shock. I will notify a rape crisis center.
And
beautiful.
In terms of the Coke shootout is really good too, because Clarence Boddicker is on 11 the entire movie. By the way, like I have a fucking like cut of all of the things that he says in the movie. Like when he's talking to Sal and he said, "I'm going to shove so much of this like powder up your wop." I was like, "What?" And he was like, "Guns, guns, guns." The Tigers are playing tonight.
I don't want to fuck with you, Sal. But I got the connection. I got the sales organization. I got the muscle to shove enough of this factory so far up your stupid wop ass that you'll shit snow for a year.
Frankie, blow this cocksucker's head off.
Ooh, guns, guns, guns. Come on, Sal. Tigers are playing tonight. I never miss a game.
It sounded like a Pusha T lyric, kind of.
Yes, yes.
I was like, wow, this man knows how to sell cocaine.
You know, bitches
I never missed a game. There was like
everything.
To me, characters like that. It's like, I know how filmmaking works, so I know that a person wrote those things down and then an actor brought them to life. But really good character actors, when they play villains like this, always sound like they just showed up and just said whatever.
Yes.
Like they told him, like, look, Clarence Boddicker's like a real prick. He's a real motherfucker. He's really unpredictable. And he was like, got it. Leave me alone. I got this. And then just riffed. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like,
so I want to hit the observations real quick because this is a good segue. So my first observation. From a podcasting perspective, am I Clarence Boddicker? Here's my reasoning. I'm balding. I wear glasses. I like gum. I enjoy baseball. I demand perfection. Only difference is I'm not a snitch. He snitched on dick.
You're not a snitch. You're not in bed with any corporate interests, to my knowledge.
No, I'm not.
You're not to my knowledge, not a murderer. I don't know that you've amputated anybody with bullets. I also think there's a distinction between like your bald dome and like Kurtwood Smith's like refusal to acknowledge that his hairline is gone. You know what I mean? Like that he would continue for another like 30 years.
Which is more of a heel move, by the way.
Yeah, it really is. It's just like, fuck it, I'm keeping it. This is all I got. There's something about Clarence Boddicker, man. Like they don't really make villains like that anymore. Like every now and then you get a pretty good one, but that one was just like, this dude is like in a different mood. I mean, like it flows with everything.
Yeah.
But like there could just be a whole movie of just Clarence Boddicker. Like if this was today, he would have like an AMC spinoff of like, oh, here's Clarence Boddicker's arc, 6 seasons of how he became like this Detroit drug maven. You know what I mean?
Boddicker
and
origins.
I'd watch that all the fuck. Like, come on, I would watch that for 10 seasons.
Who was unluckier in this movie? The rapist, Emil, or Mr. Kinney?
I want to say the rapist because like getting shot in the dick sounds terrible, but like you're a rapist, so like fuck you. But like, dude got melted. I don't know how. Like, I'm sorry. Like when I try to think of bad fates, I remember there's a screenwriter. I think it's like Stuart Beattie, the guy that wrote Collateral, was saying how like it's not hard to write good villains. It's hard to figure out cool, satisfying ways to kill good villains. Because you could have a crazy cool villain, and then when it's time to kill them, if they fall off a bridge, you're like, oh, okay.
I needed a better death for you.
Yeah, it makes me think of like when Owen Davian in Mission Impossible 3 dies. It's just Philip Seymour Hoffman gets hit by a car. And you're like, that's it? After all that shit, you got hit by a car? So like having that dude get fucking melted, like like a fucking candle.
Yeah,
like he's just hobbled down. Like, you know what I mean? I was like, yeah, this is not necessary. But also, you're like, this does the job.
And then
the worst.
And he gets exploded by. He actually dies from friggin' Clarence because he's the one who hits him with the car.
Yeah, what's funny is like he's kind of begging Ray Weiss's character to kill him, and Ray's just like, "Get the fuck away from me!" Like, oh my god, bro! And I'm like, dude, I was like, bro, you have a gun that is like 7 feet long, and like apparently explodes whole buildings. Just shoot that man in the face, please. Just end his misery.
I'm gonna go with Mr. Kinney because I feel like he had a bad day at the office. He's like, oh, I'm going to see here. I'm going to be able to flirt with the mail clerk. Oh, shit. Here, take this gun that's always in the boardroom for some reason because that's what fucking Dick uses later. And it's loaded, by the way. Yeah, use this gun. This nigga got blicked off. He got blicked and he turned into tomatoes. Robot. Yes. Who was just like, I can't hear him.
My favorite thing about that death is like their like reaction to it is like, oh, god damn it. It sounds like someone like spilled something. Like, oh fuck, you guys killed him.
I'm very disappointed in this, Dick. I was like, the fuck?
Bro, we just murdered a man. A robot murdered a man.
Touchy Kenny is now dead. Because, also, this is an observation I'm sure you noticed because there's a glut of black folk in this movie, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Ann Lewis is a dick watcher. That's what I've noticed. This is what resulted, like, when she gets the drop on Joe and he's taking a whiz, she definitely looks down and he slaps her, and that's how she falls over. She's not paying attention.
Oh.
He was like, you mind if I, she was like, you put your hands up, you mind if I finish? And she looks down and he slaps her and she goes toppling over. Don't be a dick watcher.
Lore. That's deep lore. I was like,
but it ties back to your Murphy dick gun targeting situation.
I mean, like there are certain filmmakers who are in like the pantheon of like dick cinema. You know, there's certain people who just like they make dicks a part of like their work, and like Verhoeven's like a big one of them. You know,
I want dick cinema to be like he actually works at OCP. He's in marketing. So I got a couple more observations. Was Joe Cox applying to be a hyena? That was the one thing that really, his laugh is cringe.
Yeah, it's like actually pretty unsettling to be entirely honest. Which is like, I think it's good for like a Dicky movie laugh. You know?
Yeah.
I want to be like uncomfortable.
And lastly, I have as far as the observations. How bad was Murphy's first day? I mean, this was his first day in the new fucking precinct.
It's funny because, like, yeah, like his first day is like getting like murdered into a robot, right? But like, it's so funny how that segment of the movie is like how Republicans get like police budgets raised every year. Yes. It's literally just the opening of Robocop. It's just like, there's not enough cars, not enough guns. These cops are out here fighting Clarence Boddicker. We got to get them more money, you know? And it's like,
Robo-propaganda.
That fucking bad, bro? You know what I mean? And like, obviously, I think it works for the movie in the sense that like, the movie is not about how the cops need more help to fight the bad guys. Like, that's not what the movie is about, you know? But rewatching that scene, I was like, this is so fucking funny. Like, this is such a like fucking right-wing talking point of like, look, man, their cars bump against the fucking street when they get out of the garage and sparks fly.
Which is a thing that happens in every movie.
Yeah.
Also, then on the other side of it, and going with the whole full circleness of it all, if we look at RoboCop's first day, he shot a rapist in the dick, he stopped a store from being robbed, and he saved the black mayor. you know, in that standoff. That was his first, he was just knocking down crime. I think Bob might have been right that, you know, we're going to get rid of crime in 40 days.
Well, it turns out that if cops are just replaced by fucking robots,
yes,
with guns for dicks and no oversight, yeah, you could, I guess, theoretically knock out crime in 40 days. You might knock out the populace.
Yes.
There might not be any live people to commit crime. I guess that counts as a win.
So I want to throw this one out there as we kind of wrap up in this last segment of what works, what doesn't work, and one fix. So I'll throw the one fix out first because it ties with one of the points I was making there as far as like Robocop saving the black mayor. I think the one fix in this movie, if there was like kind of something that felt glaring, was and I did the research. I was compelled to do the research, right? One good black character. And the reason I say this, it's Detroit. And Detroit in 1990, so, you know, I looked at 1980 and 1990, and it's closer to 1990. The Detroit was 75% black. So to have all of these, like, the white criminals, and I get it, and I get, like, the white police and all of that, but a few more, like, kind of non-ancillary, like, black folk or what have you, like the mayor, sure, but I forgot he's in the scene. I was like, oh, a black dude? And also in that scene where they are held hostage, the only person that he kills is like the other black guy in the office. So you pay attention to those things. And I don't know who the black person would be. I mean, honorable mention to the chief, to Sergeant Reed, rather. But,
yeah,
you know, he's kind of nullified with Joe Cox being so sucky. So
yeah, and then I mean, yeah, and like the black dude gets killed first in like the big final shootout too. He doesn't get melted, but he dies first.
But there's no pomp and circumstance with his either. His is kind of like, if going to the thing you were saying earlier, like you see everyone gets killed and it's kind of like a thing, like they have like a set when you get blicked off. His is kind of like in the fray. I'm out of here, man. Not even anybody in the club that Ray Waz is in, that Leon is his name, by the way, which is great.
Yeah.
Even the club that he's coked out, he tries to kick Robocop in the dick. There is no black people in there. They're playing like goth music. He is coked out of his mind in there.
Yeah, there's definitely like and I mean, I feel like this is pretty common. Like, look, it's like you can have a movie that's majority white and it's not necessarily considered a white movie. Like, I'm sure black people love Robocop.
Yeah.
But you cannot have a movie that is like majority black where it does not become a black movie.
Right.
Like if you remade RoboCop today and you had a bunch of black people because it was set like in a city that had a lot of black people in it. Mm-hmm. Like if the new RoboCop took place like Atlanta or something, or whatever.
Ludacris in.
You know what I mean?
Oh
like it was
God.
just like, like whatever. Let's say like that's the you had like Future in it or something. I don't know. Like if you had a bunch of black people in it, the articles would be like, oh, there's like a black spin on RoboCop and it deals with police brutality and the specter of you know what I mean? Like it would go into all that shit, And it's like, no, I mean, just look, there's some cities that just have more of this type of person. And like, you can tell a story that like, obviously if you made a black RoboCop, it would be difficult to make it and untether all the cop stuff from like police brutality issues, clearly. But I'm saying this like it's like such a far-fetched thing. This is 100% a thing that some guy is doing. Like, what if we try RoboCop again, but we make him all black? Like Jordan Peele is ignoring a voicemail right now from someone who's like, "What do you think, Black RoboCop? We can really do this."
Nope, it's starting in this month.
Already, John David Washington wants in on it. You know what I mean? We could fucking make this happen tonight. Like, so I mean. I think if you wanted to sort of,
that's really funny.
Wait, you said you had a fix. I want to hear your fix before I say anything else.
But I think that's the fix. Like bringing in, I think maybe one prominent black character, or what have you. Either you recast the Joe Cox or change that character, what have you. It doesn't have to be a villain, or maybe the drug kingpin, instead of being some like ill cast like fake Italians, because I felt like they all were Irish. They all kind of had an Irish vibe to me.
That
the
is the
guys.
Funniest part when Clarence Boddicker calls him a wop, because I was like, this guy, I know his name's Sal. Yeah. He's not particularly Italian.
Right.
He's not even like Italian adjacent. He's not Italian X, like there's a sense of like, I think if you wanted to fix it, you just make Murphy black. I feel like that would. Well, then okay. If I made the movie, if they were like, "You're going to make RoboCop today," I would probably try to cast a black guy as Murphy. And I'd actually probably just get John David Washington to just redo his performance of Black Klansman, because everything about that man embodies I can change this place from the inside. So I like the idea of the place literally physically changing him from the inside and turning him into a fucking robot, because that's like what happens to people that think this is a good job. But I know that if they made it again today, if they had to make someone black, they would just make his partner black. It would just be like one strong black woman who like helps RoboCop for like 3 scenes.
That's what I was thinking.
It
like,
should be so fucking light skinned.
But you know what it would, look like? Fucking, what is it? Police Academy? It would be like Police Academy though. I'm trying to think who the guy would be. It would be the Chris Chalk dude. Because he kind of has the same bone structure as Peter Weller.
Yeah, it's pretty similar.
Also, going back to your point about if it was set in Atlanta, I just feel like Ann Lewis is played by Jermaine Dupri. It's like, we're just going to gender swap it. Because it's like, you're 5'2". Let's make it happen.
That would be really bad if, like, so you decided to set RoboCop in Atlanta, you guys just filled it with musicians? Like, well, there's a bunch of them down here, bro. Like,
I love McConan as the villain. Like, what the fuck? The club's going up on a Tuesday. Blam.
Oh, man. I haven't thought about him in a minute. Oh, that guy. Yeah, but you're right. I think that the race thing is because it's Detroit. And it's like, I mean, I guess you can say that about a lot of movies.
It can't be
obviously.
Motown with, like, you know, like the bad boys of the Pistons in Motown, and then there's like a few ancillary like blacks here and there. Now, at the same time, and I know it's been a while since you've seen the second one, but the second one has a scene in it that's so fucking funny. I had to add it to my reel of great moments in blaxploitation, because it's like when they're going to this factory and it's a black guy at a hot dog stand, and he says, like, the cops are leaving, they're leaving strike or what have you, and he says something that I feel like he was channeling my dad. They better kick somebody's ass. That's what the black dude said. I was like, mwah, just someone's uncle was cast. So I think he's trying to fix what I felt like the movie was lacking.
There's sort of, I think there's something, it's like, it's unfortunate that this has to happen.
Sure.
But I'd sort of prefer it to what normally happens, which is like white TV writers having to like figure out what black people sound like from like Twitter and getting it wrong or whatever. But I also don't think it should be like an actor's job to like black something up himself or whatever. But I don't know if you've seen Michael Bay's Ambulance, but Wale has like a relatively minor part in the movie. It's like not a big important part at all. And it is pretty clear that all of his stuff is like ad-libbed. Like there's just no way they wrote Wale. Like he takes what is essentially like a completely unimportant kind of throwaway character who only features into like 1 or 2 key scenes, and he just gives it this whole rich inner life of like, this guy has a whole life outside of this fucking movie. You know what I mean? Like he has a whole thing he's doing, and I know all of it is just Wally like just being himself and like kind of trying to make the character like deeper and more interesting. And like black actors have to do that all the fucking time in movies. They have to come and like bring their blackness. And that scene you're talking about, I imagine that was just like a black character actor who was just like,
absolutely,
I'm gonna say this, I'm gonna do this. Like,
I'm Red Fox's cousin, because he had that energy.
You know?
He had that energy.
Yeah, you know, like, yeah, exactly. Like that's important. That kind of texture and authenticity.
So as we wrap up here in these last few moments, I want to talk about what works and what doesn't work. So I'm going to throw out, you know, what I think works and then what I think doesn't work, and I want to hear your thoughts on it as well. So I'm going to start off with what works. I think the score works. The score, it's great. I think Ann Lewis works. The only caveat to that is I think she bonded with Murphy a little too quick, because, again, that was his first day. And maybe it's this notion of you're a good cop trying to do good. So, but, you know, that scene that you're describing with the targeting, it's like, yeah, you're going to help him, but also we haven't had any time to establish it, because within the first 20 minutes, dude is gone. But she's trying to get back her partner, that was his first day.
They have, it's the cop thing. It's like in a cop movie, it doesn't matter if someone's been your partner for 20 years or 5 minutes. It's like, that was my partner. Like we are hardwired to know that is like, oh shit, that's your partner. True. You know, that's my quarterback. You know, that's a really important bond. You know what I mean? Like you can't fight that. So I think it only works because they're both really good actors. I think that's the thing. I think Weller and I think they're really good.
As far as the other side of the last part of this column, of the part that works, I think the satirical elements, namely the news breaks, they work really well for me, and that's the common theme through each one of the movies, and they're pretty consistently good for what they're aiming to be. And it's like the things that I hate about news coverage, they really key on it very well.
I think why they brought Frank Miller in. It's very Dark Knight Returns. You know what I mean?
Yeah, good observation there. Right, absolutely. Okay, lastly, I'm going to harp on it again, but the Detroit isn't really black in this movie, and that just doesn't work for me. I mean, at least have somebody wearing a Pistons jersey or something, And lastly, RoboCop visiting his old home, I fucking hated that. I don't know why. It just...
Oh, really?
It just, like, I get why it's there, and I don't think it should be omitted, but just the way that it is, like... And maybe because I was a kid when I first saw it, it's like, man, can we get back to killing people? That was kind of where I was at.
No, I actually have a different take on that. I don't think... that's probably why you felt that way when you were a kid, because, you do want to see RoboCop fucking spinning the gun and being cool. As an adult, though... It's been how many years? Do you know how many movies you've seen with that exact fucking scene?
No, you're right. You're right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that is the only scene in RoboCop that feels stale because it's a scene that you just see all the time. Everything else in the movie is kind of its own thing. Like even though tons of sci-fi movies since have stolen the point of view of RoboCop waking up and stuff and seeing everybody as they're working on him, like that's been in tons of movies since. And also it's from like some movies in the 40s as well, whatever. It's not new, but that doesn't feel stale when you're watching it. That one fucking scene of like it's tethered to the idea of like when a wife dies in a movie and they have the like slow-mo her under the sheets. Like, oh, I miss you. It's, oh, you're gone. And then he wakes up and now he's alone. Like, we've seen that shit so much, and it kind of abstracts his family into just being like a loose idea of kinship that you're like, okay, can you get back to shooting people now?
Can you get back to using your enormous dick gun to shoot people?
It's time.
What else do you have that you think works, doesn't work, what have you? What are your thoughts there?
Oh, no, I'm way easier. I think everything that works in this movie. Okay, I don't think anything doesn't work in the movie other than that one scene. The one thing that I say is like the best thing about the movie is this movie is an hour and 40 minutes long.
Uh-huh.
And that's it. And it does the whole fucking shebang. I love it.
It gets it.
I love it.
And I think it knows what it is too. And it had that, and going back to the budget and kind of how it went down, it worked. And I really would like to see like each attempt to try to recreate that has not worked. And, we've had time from it. Like it'll be 30 years since Robocop 3. Robocop 3 was 1993 rather, and it was ass. And they were already kind of shifting to a PG-13. The Prime Directives show was not good. That was one of those Canadian productions. It's like, this doesn't work. And it's funny that this movie, despite it not really being geared for kids because it's so violent, almost was an X-rated movie, they had a cartoon that came out, like two of them, and one was through Marvel. It was part of the Marvel Action Hour in the late 80s.
Yeah, the cartoons, the toys, because look, yeah, it's like a dark, gritty, violent movie about, like sort of cyberpunky approach to politics and stuff. It's got a robot. Motherfucker's a robot, man. Like, there's just like, if you're a corporate or whatever, and they're like, hey, we should make toys about this because like this happens, the guy gets shot in the dick. And they're like, no, it's a robot with a gun. Kids are gonna fucking buy it. No, make the toy.
It's akin to, I don't know if you watched The Toys That Made Us, but it's akin to the story around He-Man. And they were like, it's not the scale. The tiger's too big and He-Man's too small. Fuck it, put a saddle on him, make it happen. Do it. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, like who gives a shit, dude? Like, come the fuck on. Yeah, the logic of toys is not the logic of storytelling in real life. It's toys. The kids are gonna play make believe with it.
So I think that's a good spot for us to close on. I guess I'll throw it out there. Watch this movie if you haven't seen it. It's great. Definitely check it out. And thumbs up or whatever, dick guns up. I don't know.
Sorry, I think the best fucking way to tell people they need to see RoboCop, like thumbs up or whatever. Fucking RoboCop, do it.
Where can he find you at? Where can he check you out online, man?
You can follow me on Twitter at allnewdom. I don't tweet as much as I used to because for my sanity. But I guess the main place to find me is on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel, The Armchair Auteur. I do movie reviews, video essays, and stuff. I've been on sort of an accidental, prolonged hiatus, but I will be back posting new reviews very soon. So yeah, that's like usually the easiest place to find me and where all my stuff is.
Yeah. So yeah, subscribe to this podcast. Let's watch it again on all the places. And for again the super talented Dom Griffin, thank you again, sir, for coming on today. This has been great. And I'm gonna wrap up. So keep watching those movies, folks. Namely, check out Robocop.